Hey there, CityCast listeners. Are you ready to make a difference this holiday season? Food and Friends is a beacon of hope right here in DC, providing home-delivered, medically tailored meals and medical nutrition therapy to our neighbors battling cancer, HIV, AIDS, and other serious illnesses. And here's where you come in. Slice of Life, their annual pie sale, is now in its 18th year. The goal is to sell 6,000 pies, helping to provide an incredible 1.9 million meals for our neighbors in need. Better yet, these are not ordinary pies baked by schlubs like me. They are actually made to order by Whisked Bakery, the award-winning woman-owned local bakery. So here's the deal. Do good, feel good, and buy pies. Visit foodandfriends.org to place your order, and let's make this Thanksgiving a little brighter for those in need. That's foodandfriends.org, foodandfriends.org.
Today on CityCast DC, it's election day, but in the district, this year that's pretty boring. So we're looking ahead to a 2024 race that's already getting pretty heated for the shadow senator role. City Paper's Alex Koma explains what the job is, why Senator Michael D. Brown is in the hot seat, and who is gearing up to challenge him next year. Today's Tuesday, November 7th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. So Alex, DC is probably going to have kind of a spicy election next year for shadow senator. That's because right now, one of our shadow senators is this guy, Michael D. Brown, and people seem, kind of frustrated by him at the moment. Why is that?
Yeah, well, he has always been sort of a colorful character in DC politics. And so he, has always had his fair share of detractors. But, it has especially, sort of rankled what I would call, DC's more progressive community, given the way that Michael D. Brown behaved during the fight over the revisions to the criminal code earlier this year. This was the fight happening, between the city council, the mayor, and Congress over, revisions that the council wanted to pass to its criminal laws that the mayor didn't think was a very good idea, and Congress ultimately stepped in to overturn. That's kind of unprecedented in the recent history of, DC's relationship with its federal overseers, and Michael D. Brown is theoretically an advocate for DC's autonomy in his role as shadow senator, and yet here he was sort of implicitly cheering Congress on as he was referring to council as petulant children and comparing them to drunk teenagers for their decision to pass these criminal code revisions. And that didn't go over terribly well in many quarters.
I can imagine not. Yeah, colorful is one word to describe that.
It's important context to know that he's been doing this for a very long time. He's been in office for several terms now. He is commonly referred to in DC politics circles as White Mike to differentiate the fact that there is, in fact, another Michael Brown in DC politics, a former at-large council member who later had to resign due to bribery charges. So there's a lot of colorful stuff happening here, is what I'll say.
For folks who might not get that reference, White Mike is a character on that old sitcom on the WB, the Marlon Brothers show. I love that vernacular is part of this conversation to represent this is the other Mike. So shadow senator is part of a broader shadow delegation, right? How many people are on it? What are they meant to do? And what is this shadow government for folks who are not familiar?
Yeah, the idea is that if DC wants to become a state someday, which pretty much everyone in DC politics agrees it should, then it might as well start acting like a state. So, back in the 90s, as these discussions were becoming, more serious, the district decided to create 2 shadow senators, just as DC would have if there were a state, and a shadow representative, just as it would have if it were any other state with a small population, relative to the other states. So the whole idea is that, DC should be acting as if. And, these people have they can't go to the floor of Congress and cast a vote, but they can, advocate on DC's behalf for statehood, with the idea being that they can be, another access point, a liaison between Congress, who would be deciding on a statehood decision, and the White House and the district government, and advocating for the district government where council members and the mayor have, myriad other responsibilities. The idea is the shadow delegation should be pushing on one issue and one issue only, and that is DC autonomy and ultimately statehood.
Are folks in the shadow government paid?
It's a complicated, situation where they get some funding to do some things, but this is fundamentally a volunteer, donating your time kind of situation. I got to say, the whole idea of putting responsibility on people, but not really, recuperating them for their time is, making all of this kind of more complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine. How are these roles different than the role that someone like Eleanor Holmes Norton plays in our kind of weird local federal hybrid, sometimes feels like it's not really real government?
I know it is all sort of maddening, and one of many reasons it would be nice if the district were simply a state. Basically, Eleanor Holmes Norton is technically considered a delegate. She has the power to, for instance, introduce legislation. She can cast limited, votes on committee proceedings. She can sit on committees. It is perhaps like the bare minimum that Congress could give, but it is more than the shadow delegation gets to do, which is basically try and use their megaphone, and that's kind of it.
Okay, so comparatively, the shadow delegation, they have a lot less power and they don't get paid. So actually, kind of doesn't sound like a sweet gig at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about how you use it. And that is sort of the conversation that will, be happening in 2024, as we have in the election for the seat that Michael D. Brown is currently in. The question is, what is this role? A lot of people will tell you, they want to use it as a megaphone and they want to drive attention to statehood. But I mean, you got to look at the politics too. This is a way to get your name out there in front of voters. Shadow senators have and representatives have had ambitions for higher office. Some haven't, but some certainly have, including Michael D. Brown, who's run for council several times unsuccessfully. So it definitely comes with its own benefits. You get to say that you're a senator, even if you got to add that shadow qualifier.
What if we told you that this could be a great time to save on a new home? The Arbor at Tacoma is situated for your most convenient urban lifestyle and is now offering 2.5% credit to use to buy down your interest rate below market rates or pay a portion of your closing costs on your brand new home. The kitchens feature striking dark navy and white cabinetry with champagne bronze hardware, and throughout the residence you'll find wood plank flooring and smart home technology. Select homes even feature a private outdoor space. Perfect whether you want to enjoy the vibrant Tacoma, DC community or comfortably retreat into a sleek sanctuary all your own. With a quick walk to the metro, the city is all yours. Or stay close and enjoy the on-site retail. Located at 218 Cedar Street Northwest, the Arbor at Tacoma offers brand new 1- and 2-bedroom condos starting in the upper 300,000s. Visit thearborliving.com or contact our sales managers for more information. Our 2.5% credit is only available for a limited time. Again, visit thearborliving.com for details. So speaking of Michael D. Brown, he's been in this role for more than 15 years. How does he feel about this job?
I spoke to him a couple months ago now, and he is sort of on the fence, I think, about whether he wants to keep doing it. If he were to run for another term, he would be in his late 70s. And as you say, he's been doing this for some time. So he certainly still has very strong feelings about all of this, even in the face of the criticism that he's received. He's not backing down. I mean, basically, the way he sees it is he came out vindicated out of this whole discussion because Congress ultimately ended up overturning DC's criminal code. And so the way he sees it is he was right to chastise city council. So on the one hand, he seems conflicted about, wanting to keep doing it. But on the other hand, he's not really talking like a guy who's, not done being involved in the political debate just yet. So we'll have to see.
You mentioned his relationship with council. How do you think he feels about DC council?
Well, he has not been shy about his criticisms. I can tell you that, based on my conversations with people around the Wilson building, that there's not a lot of love lost there, whether it is the council or the mayor. There was a recent meeting of DC's Statehood Commission, which is a sort of loosely organized body, that, is technically an arm of the DC government, meant to be doing some of this statehood advocacy, within the mayoral administration, that they invited Michael D. Brown and the rest of the shadow delegation to speak at. And it basically led to the mayor storming out over his persistent complaints that the office isn't funded enough. So, it's not a great relationship going either way. The way he sees it is the council has been intransigent in the face of rising, violence in the city, and has, refused to take action. And the way they see it about him is that he should stay out of their business and focus on statehood advocacy and not put his nose into policy, which is, kind of their domain.
All right, picture this. You are at the airport or strolling through the grocery store, and suddenly there they are, someone who seems tailor-made for you. You know that feeling, right? The instant connection you can't ignore. But then they leave. Another mixed connection? Not with Never Missed, a new dating app that turns those chance encounters into unforgettable beginnings. It's simple. Download the Never Missed app for free right now on the App Store or Google Play. In just moments, you will be ready to transform fleeting glances into lasting connections. Download the Never Missed app and make your story of how you met an unforgettable chapter in your journey.
Has Brown faced serious challenges in past elections, or have people been pretty satisfied with him up until now?
Yeah, well, part of the reason I think you're seeing some momentum, other candidates getting in this race right now is because in 2018, the last time he was on the ballot, he did get a pretty serious challenger. Many progressive groups in the city sort of coalesced behind Andrea Thomas, who has been a longtime statehood advocate, and she came within just a few points of beating him. And, I think that sort of showed people that he's not unbeatable, because for many years, people sort of broadly assumed that he was, simply because of, and, he insists up and down that this isn't true when you talk to him, but I think there is no denying the fact that many people just simply don't know the difference between the various Michael Browns. It is a confusing situation. And so I think he has frequently benefited from people assuming that he is Michael A. Brown, a politician who remains popular in some communities, particularly Black communities east of the Anacostia River. And they just sort of, they see Michael Brown on the ballot. And, it's reasonable to not look at the middle initial of the person you're voting for. And I think that has consistently buoyed him, as it surely would in any, re-election effort in 2024. We kind of have to see.
Well, adding to that confusion is your reporting that says Brown says that he might not even run again. So who is running?
At this point, there are several candidates in the race, but probably the two most prominent ones, just based on their past experience in statehood advocacy and local politics, are Wendy Hamilton. She was the first person, who has experience in local politics to announce. She previously ran against Eleanor Holmes Norton back in 2022, and has been, she's from Ward 8, serves as an advisory neighborhood commissioner there, and, basically has been active in a lot of statehood, advocacy around the criminal code revision. That includes Hands Off DC Coalition, which is a group of progressive organizations trying to push back against congressional interference. And she sort of brings, I think, a decent amount of name recognition from some of that experience into all of this. But the candidate who more recently declared, Ankit Jain, also has a decent amount of that to offer as well. A longtime attorney who up until recently worked at the Sierra Club, and has been active both in his local Democratic organization and in some of the same progressive groups that Wendy Hamilton has been in. It's sort of on paper kind of similar candidates, to people who are telling similar stories about wanting to see the office reinvigorated and upset with Michael Brown's comments. And it will sort of be interesting to watch over the next few months to see, does one of them really start to emerge as the favorite among people who are, the anti-Michael Brown vote? And then, of course, the key question of, does he run again? A divided field is going to benefit the incumbent.
What should people know about our other shadow senator, Paul Strauss?
Just like, Michael D. Brown, he's been doing this job for a very long time. I believe he took office in 97 and is currently set to serve through 2027. So that tells you that he's got some experience here. He has been what I would describe as maybe a little bit more subtle than someone like Michael D. Brown. He, too, has aspirations for a higher office. I know he's run for council at least once and has been, he's been involved in efforts over the years, like trying to get, some more national attention to statehood, that, he's testified before Congress, I believe, and has been, involved in Democratic primary politics, trying to get the various Democratic contenders to stress this issue, because it's kind of a sad fact that, even in an issue that may seem like common sense to us, district residents, it still, requires a little force and forcefulness to get national politicians, even Democrats, to pay attention to it. And it's certainly something he's been involved in over the years.
What does all this drama and confusion say about DC's fight for home rule more generally? Like, what is going on here?
Nothing good. It's something that I've been reporting on a lot over the last few, weeks and months, both sort of spurred on by the controversy over the criminal code and then in the fallout over that. I mean, I think a lot of us who are in DC politics remember the enthusiasm that so many statehood advocates had coming out of Joe Biden's election. Democrats had unified control of Congress for the first time in over a decade. And even though it was narrow control, I think many people hoped that they would give statehood some serious consideration. But ever since then, I mean, there's no action, coming out of Joe Biden's, first 2 years in power, largely because of some intransigent moderate senators that, gave an opening for Republicans to take back the House in the midterms and has essentially, really led to I think a pretty severe degradation of, autonomy and home rule ever since then, because you not only see Republicans leading this effort to step in and substitute their judgment for that of the duly elected DC Council on the criminal code, but also just an unending string of hearings, demagoguing about crime in the district and Republicans trying to, score some easy political points by pointing at a Democratic-run city like DC and saying, look how bad things are over there, for their national, Fox News audience. That's all been very bad for DC, especially when you see, our shadow senators echoing some of those talking points. It's definitely led many people I speak to in the statehood movement to be a bit disheartened, because now they're sort of left hoping that Joe Biden wins again and Democrats retake control of Congress in 2024, and we start all this talk about statehood over again.
Alex, thank you so much for being here and helping us understand a sort of confusing situation about DC.
Well, it is my pleasure.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friend who can't stop talking about DC statehood. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.